Welcome, everyone. My name's Craig McClean. I'm a journalist, but equally important to me is I've been hopefully an adoptive member of the Anjunabeats family. I hope you guys would agree. Yeah? Absolutely. I've written many things for and with Above and Beyond over the years. I wrote when Jono did a solo album or a semi-solo album in 2022. I wrote about that, and when Pavo did his last year, I wrote about that too. But I don't think the other guys would be too upset if I said that the story of this record is even curiouser than those two side projects, which did have great backstories themselves, but this is something else. Lovely, soulful, melodic, romantic. Not my words, my wife's words. Thank you, Donna. These songs are all of that and more. What's even better is they've been buried like lost treasure for the best part of 30 years. I never expected anything like this to come from the Above and Beyond family. So I was gobsmacked when I first heard about this record's existence earlier this year, and then even more so when I heard the actual songs. The video we just saw there for Biker Babe, that's kind of the foundational lyric, really, from which everything else flowed all those years ago. First question, I guess, Tony, how close to reality was that depiction?
It's a fantasy projecting real life events into the world of Twin Peaks, which was a TV show that I was very much into at the time, as was Bob Bradley, the producer of the recordings. And so putting Shelly in the Roadhouse instead of where we actually met, which was in a hotel in Ireland, just gave it a little bit more romance. But I think the important thing for me when I was writing the song was that this was the first song I'd ever written about my life. And I think I was a little afraid to be completely honest. The songs I'd been writing before tended to be based on novels or films or other people's lives or famous people or World War III or other things like that. And so this was the sort of start of a process where I learned to write songs about my own life and the characters in it. And the girl that I met in a hotel in Ireland when I was visiting one of the bands that I worked on at Warner Brothers was from Seattle. Her name was Shelly. She was actually a waitress, which is kind of a nice little Twin Peaks link. And she was the nanny for one of the band members' children, but she wasn't enjoying it. And one night over at the pool table, I said to her, why don't you, she was thinking of jacking in the job and going back to Seattle. And I said, why don't you come and live with me in London? And she said, okay, I'll do that. And so she came, and I embarked on this sort of whirlwind romance with a very strong, very independent, completely unromantic, hardened Seattle girl, mail order grunge bride, my friends called her. I found her infinitely interesting, and I think the idea of writing songs about her did occur to me, but was cemented one night when she just said, go and get your guitar and sing to me. And I think those words, harmless though they may sound, were perhaps the most important words for Above and Beyond fans, for me at least, because that was the start of the process where I started to write songs about my life, and that's how a voice began to develop, which I took unknowingly into Above and Beyond.
Thank you. So, as we heard in that song there, this girl rode you around the room. Before we get into the nuts and bolts, shall we say, of these songs and how they happen to be, as it were, lost for the best part of 3 decades, Tony, could you paint us a picture of the Tony McGuinness of 1995, 1996, please?
It was to say Shelly changed my life is an understatement. I was somebody who was into rock and roll, hated club music, thought it was a bit of a joke, actually. There was a lot of club music happening at the time. Didn't ever want to go clubbing, didn't want to do ecstasy, that was for idiots. And Shelly changed all that. And I think in the process of me discovering club music and discovering the emotion in club music, I think that sort of set the stall for Above and Beyond. But at the time, my musical roots were in the acoustic and rock world. So the songs that I wrote for Shelly, sitting there with my guitar, as we recovered from yet another clubbing weekend, came out in the form that you hear there. I think influenced by, I don't know if you've had a chance to listen to the playlist, but it's more like crowded house music than house music I was into. So I think, have I answered your question there?
Can we talk about your fashion choices at the time? Because I think now he's rightly famed for his dandyish choices, shall we say. But then you're more of a, Patrick Cox loafers?
No, well, I think when I met Shelly, I was wearing almost exclusively Banana Republic because I was marketing director at Warner Music. But her influence and the influence of the clubbing fashions at the time, and the influences of a man sitting at the back there who worked for me, who was also a bit of a fashion icon for me, I changed completely. I lost 1.5 stone. I started wearing tartan trousers. I grew a beard, which I still got today. And I think I started on a path that led me to John Owen, Parvo and Above and Beyond, but I didn't know it at the time. This was me enjoying clubbing as a dancer. I couldn't see the point in DJing. I thought that was a waste of time when you could have so much fun on the dance floor. And you could wear ridiculous things. And I think one of the things, of those of us who remember those clubbing days back then, John, there was an openness to the people in London that was really quite exciting to experience. And I wouldn't have got there without Shelly.
So she unstoppered something creatively in you, and these songs started coming out of you. An important figure was Egg White. Would you mind explaining to the lovely people here how you knew Egg, why we should all love Egg if we don't know already, and the importance of him to your blossoming writing skills?
I think the song on the album that I wrote just before Shelly arrived was Carry Me Home. And in fact, Egg White was an artist who was signed to Warner Brothers in a duo called Egg and Alice. There's one of their, or two of their songs in the playlist that I put on Spotify for you. Egg was inspiring to me, and he loved Carry Me Home. And when he was doing a tour for his own album, he wanted to do a small acoustic tour, and me and him went out in the UK and did some dates, and he elected to make Carry Me Home the final song in the set. So it was almost like the climax of the whole set, which was very sweet. The first weekend that Shelly was in England, when she came back from Ireland from the hotel, was actually a recording session that I booked with Egg to record Carry Me Home and another song about World War III. And so Shelly, I guess, saw me as somebody who stood up with a guitar and sang. And I think that image was one that stuck with her, and I'm really glad that it did, because it kind of turned me into that thing.
Yeah, Egg is obviously a multi-award winning writer for Adele, Duffy, Will Young, and many more. So obviously someone who with great songwriting skills recognised that you had something special there. This whirlwind romance, as you describe it, how long did it last, and how did it come to a climax, if we can talk about being ridden round the room again?
It lasted just short of 4.5 months. I knew at the beginning that Shelly would have to go back to America. She had a flat there, and she had a flatmate who came over and ended up getting married to Bob's brother. So she had to go back to America. But I think knowing that this thing would have a time limit, knowing this thing was going to end, gave the songs a kind of melancholy atmosphere, even though I was in the midst of the happy part. And I think that mix of happy, sad was, I find in songs, a very intoxicating thing, because whether you're happy or whether you're sad, there's something in it for you there. And I think knowing that this whirlwind romance was coming to an end kind of infected the songs, and I'm pleased with the form that it gave them.
So you write this brace of songs, you record them with Bob, you buy a recorder off of the band Olive. Remember Olive, anyone? They were instrumental here as well. And then what happens? Do these songs get lost, literally or figuratively?
Yeah, I bought the 8-track machine, which is on the front of the T-shirt, from the guy from Olive, who also used to play, Tim his name was, used to play trumpet with Simply Red, and also the mixing desk and the first sampler that I had. The problem was that the tape machine, shortly after I finished recording the songs, broke, and I didn't really know what to do then. I didn't really want to buy another tape recorder. I didn't really know that you could get the tapes transferred to digital using somebody else's tape recorder. So I was kind of stuck. But by then, Above and Beyond had started, and so my need for these songs, or the world's need for them, kind of diminished. And I think what then happened fairly sharply afterwards, although I must be honest that it was certainly not my intention to be a songwriter in Above and Beyond when we started doing that. It was we got together to do remixes, and the idea of doing our own music was something that maybe had occurred to us, but we weren't really talking about. And the idea of me writing sad love songs that I got into the habit of doing was a million miles away, because we didn't really think that kind of thing would work in dance music. So that whole the solo album, the songs that were on it, didn't feel like it was part of my musical present, and I just forgot about it for about 10 years.
Obviously, Above and Beyond took off, as everyone here knows, and continued to be a legitimately global phenomenon. Had you resigned yourself that these songs were a part of your past that would and maybe should never see the light of day? And if so, what changed?
I think I thought they might come out one day, but it was one of those things where I didn't really have any means of progressing them. And so I didn't really sort of think about it. I got on with writing other songs. I mean, you'll hear in the songs on the album little lyrical references that I stole from Above and Beyond, because I thought they weren't ever going to come out in their original form. So the Big Reel Spinning, which is, I forget which song it ended up in, and Satellite as well. So there's sort of lyrical references in there that I just stole because I thought, Salt will never come out. But it remained this thing, and it was in 2011 that Bob suggested I get the tapes digitally transferred, which was, I didn't even know that you could do that. And I did, and there began this sort of long, laborious process of getting the recordings in time. And then in 2018, I think a long time had gone past by now, and I was thinking maybe these should come out. I said to Bob, do you want to help me finish this? And Bob was not really interested in doing it. He saw it as something that was sort of in his past. So Tim Hutton, the brass player in the acoustic band, helped me finish the album, get it over the line. And I recorded some real strings in Canada and in America. And then Igor, lovely Igor, our sound mixing engineer, started to mix it in his spare time. And then Jono and Parvo both put out their solo records, and I thought, hang on a sec, here's one I made earlier. I thought it was time for it to come out. I have to say, sitting here listening to it with you was a very cathartic experience for me. My heart was beating through my chest. It's been a long time that this thing has sat on my computer being fiddled with and poked about and played privately to friends, and for it to become a public thing is really quite an emotional moment for me. So thank you for being here and being so gracious. Thanks.
Bravo. Before we dig a little bit further into the new breathing iteration of these songs, obviously there was this connective tissue between this solo project from long ago and Above and Beyond, because Bob became quite important to the band in 2014 and 2016. Would you want to maybe break down that for us, please, Tony?
Bob was a guy I was in a band with before this process, and I loved what he did to my songs. I mean, the way that I wrote them was just me strumming an acoustic guitar, and the productions that you hear were almost entirely of his creation. The string arrangements, the bass parts, the drum programming. A lot of it got redone and remade in the years gone by, but I just remember thinking, this is extraordinary to start with just a strummed acoustic guitar and then up with these amazing productions. I didn't really understand what a producer was before I started working with Bob. So when we, many years later, started thinking about doing acoustic, it was for me one thing and one thing only, and that was the thing that we would get Bob Bradley to help us do. And that's what he did. It took me a while to convince Jono and Parvo that we should do it, but I'm very glad that we did. And in 2014, Bob was the musical director and producer of the first acoustic and the second acoustic albums, and remains, a very dear friend to this day. In fact, his daughter works for us.
So we get to the last couple of years where the songs are viable again because you've managed to retrieve them from this defunct technology. You've spruced them up to some extent. The sentiments and the emotions are still a time capsule, frozen in time from the mid-90s. How upsetting / discombobulating was it for you hearing these songs and these lyrics specifically that you'd written in the throes of this clubby, druggy rush of love for 4.5 months? Did you recognize the man that you were hearing?
I think today I did. I think that was one of the things that when you're working on music, it becomes a job of work, I suppose. You become a little bit disconnected from it. Words are words. She rode me around the room is there so that I can then say he punched you around the room, a verse later. All of the words in a song are there for their effect on the listener, and when you're the creator, often you divorce yourself from that feeling. But I have to say, sitting back there next to Jono, when I was listening to it all again, it all came flooding back. And I think, for me at least, it recorded a very particular moment in time with full emotion. And hopefully it does that to the listeners as well.
Yeah, okay. We're going to move to the Q&A in 1 second. In fact, let's do it now. Any questions from the not cheap seats, the plush seats? John, have you got any questions? Yeah.
It very quickly got very close to this. The difference is that the number of people singing backing vocals has gone up because of Tim. The quality of the backing vocals probably in their recording, because we were recording tape to tape to tape to tape, and some of the extra guitars, and then the strings being real strings instead of synth strings. But if you listen to the 8-track demos from 1997, they sound almost exactly the same. So, it genuinely is a time capsule in that way, but just made more professional sounding, I suppose.
Thank you, John. Anyone else from the floor? Yes, sir, here.
I think it would be great if I could sing it live. I didn't think I could. There was a weird thing that happened with the video. I've attended many video shoots. I used to work for a record company and made hundreds of videos, but I'd never stood close enough to anybody who lip synced to know really what you do. So I'm standing there with the guitar, the song's about to start, and I'm really not sure whether I'm just going to go like this or sing. And because I recorded the songs 25 years ago and I've smoked a lot of cigarettes between then and now, my voice has dropped a lot. So I didn't think I could sing it. But then the count happened and I found myself singing Biker Babe. and sung it for 3.25 hours or whatever it was that we were shooting. So it's not impossible. I would like to do it at a scale that would match the acoustic record, because the productions, I think, warrant that. That's very expensive, so I'm not sure. So we'll have to see. Fingers crossed.
Yes, lady here, thank you. She's here tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Can you come in now, please, Shelly?
Shelly, there's a line in one of the songs. She cut herself from every living photograph. She had a pocketbook full of photos of other adventures that she'd had, and literally the guy involved had been torn out in every single case. She came. What's that? She rode me around the room. She went back to Seattle. We kept in touch for a little while. She moved and didn't give me a forwarding number. Her flatmate, who ended up being April's auntie, doesn't know where she is. We don't know where she is. She's a very private person, and I'm quite happy to keep it that way. Hopefully, yeah.
In the course of the writing process, writing this biog that Tony and I worked on, I kind of Googled her. I know her second name, and I Googled her. And I'm not on Facebook, and neither is he. And a link came up to probably her. And I think when I mentioned it to you, we both stepped away from our respective laptops for fear of you don't want to go near that flame again, do you? No. That's a categorical no, ladies and gentlemen. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
We've seen how your acoustic albums have come from love songs and then developed into these versions, right? Do you think this would go the other way around? That you actually make some
You can answer this after he.
Well, I think in some ways the reason why these songs have ended up on this record and not Above and Beyond is partly because of the time signature. A lot of them are in 6/8, so they don't work the other way around. The tempos are too slow, except for Baby Doll White, for which there was a remix that came out during lockdown with a tiny bit of the vocal. But no, it's not my intention to do club mixes of them. I'm not sure that. I mean, we could do them, but I think they live in this world, really.
I've got around time for a couple more. Molly, yeah. When do I get paid? Is that your question?
Depends what day it is. I think Carry Me Home, because it's not about my life, is easier for me to like than the others. The others it's very hard when it's about you to know whether it's any good or not. But I think Carry Me Home is really good. But I like Biker Babe, I like Baby Doll White, I like Long Way, I like Crying, I like them all, really, to a point.
Yes, sir, in the back.
this process in this period over the last few weeks and months, culminating in the album coming out, as you said, this cathartic feeling of sharing this music eventually, how do you find that influencing your day job of writing music and contributing to Above and Beyond?
Well, I guess I took the process that led to this album and used it in Above and Beyond anyway. I mean, I think I can distinctly remember the first time I came back from a weekend away, and Jono had written a piece of music that became Far From In Love. And I wrote Far From In Love again. We didn't know if this was the sort of thing that Above and Beyond should be doing at all. We'd made Ocean Lab, Clear Blue Water with Justine, but we had no clear idea about what Above and Beyond would be. And I didn't know if that song would be the kind of thing that we ought to be doing. We ended up getting a girl to sing it, Kate. I forget Kate's second name. And because we didn't think that men would be singing in dance music, it took until Alone Tonight for us to get the courage to do that. But I think the process has always been the same for me. Things happen in my life. They get stored away in a notebook or in my brain or whatever else. Jono and Pavo write a piece of music. I listen to it. I get inspired and I write something that's happened to me in lyrical form. I think it's important to say when you write a song about real life, you don't just document what happened. You have to give it some lyrical story structure for it to have an impact. The chorus has got to hit. The chorus has got to have something in it that you haven't heard from the verse. The second verse has got to add to the first. There's a structure to it. It's a bit like a crossword puzzle in that way. But I think the honesty of writing from my own perspective is something that happened again during this process, and I've never stopped doing that. That's the way I work now.
Thank you. We're coming up on closing time now, but I'll just read you something that Tony and I discussed a couple of months back when we did this biography. I asked him how apprehensive he was at the prospects of these deeply personal, deeply pivotal moment as well in his life becoming public knowledge via these soul-bearing, heart-rending songs. He said, "I'm terrified, and yet not. Enough time has gone by from these events for them not to have the emotional power over me that they may have had even 20 years ago. Once you've written a song, whether it's about your father or a love affair or what happens when you die, you've opened your soul for the most part, and it stays open. So hopefully, I'll be able to cope, but I'll let you know in a few weeks' time." So here we are, a few weeks' time down the road. Tony, how are you coping?
Better than I was half an hour ago, I have to say. But no, good. I think this has been good for me, and I'm looking forward to getting on with some new music.
On that point, finally, is there new music coming for you and the boys?
I'm not at liberty to say, but yes. Of course, that's what we do for a living.
We can ask John in the bar afterwards if he's got any more intel. Are we done? Okay. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming along tonight. Thank you, Tony, for an incredible record, for bearing your soul, for bearing everything. And to the sainted Shelly, wherever she is, thank you too.